Have you ever caught yourself thinking about them when you didn't even mean to? You're trying to move on, stay busy, focus on your life, but somehow your mind keeps going back. It shows up in quiet moments, at work, late at night, even when everything seems fine. And you start asking yourself, why can't I just let this go? Here's the truth. Why you can't stop thinking about them, and how to finally let go isn't about weakness. It's about understanding what your mind is still holding on to. And once you understand that, letting go becomes possible. You keep going back to certain moments, replaying them in your mind, trying to understand what really happened or what you might have missed. It can feel like if you just think about it one more time, you'll finally get the answer that settles everything. But what your mind is actually doing is searching for closure. When something ends without clear resolution, the brain keeps circling back, trying to complete the story. That's why the thoughts don't stop on their own. It's not weakness. It's how the mind processes unfinished experiences. The challenge is that not every situation gives you the clarity you're looking for. Sometimes, there are no more answers left to find. In those moments, continuing to search only deepens the loop. A more grounded approach is to shift your focus from what you didn't get to what you can give yourself now. Instead of asking, why did this happen? You begin asking, what do I need to accept? That small shift starts to break the cycle. When you allow yourself to accept what is already clear, even if it's uncomfortable, the mind slowly begins to settle. At the same time, what you're feeling isn't just about thoughts. It's about the emotional imprint that was formed. Experiences that carry meaning tend to stay in the nervous system longer. Even when you logically understand that it's over, your emotional side may still be catching up. That's why certain memories or feelings show up unexpectedly, even when you're trying to move forward. It's not because you're choosing to go back. It's because your mind and body are still processing what they experienced. Emotional patterns don't disappear instantly. They fade with time, distance, and new experiences. Trying to force yourself to stop thinking often creates more pressure, which keeps the cycle active. A more effective way is to allow the feeling to exist without feeding it. You notice it, but you don't build on it. You let it pass without attaching more meaning. Over time, this reduces the intensity. The memory may still exist, but it no longer carries the same emotional weight. And that's where real healing begins. Your mind doesn't hold on to everything equally. It tends to return to the moments that felt meaningful, safe, or emotionally strong. That's why certain memories keep showing up more than others. You might find yourself revisiting a few specific scenes, conversations, or feelings, while everything else fades into the background. It can make the past seem more complete or more valuable than it actually was. But this is a selective process. The mind highlights what felt good or significant and quietly leaves out what was confusing, difficult, or unbalanced. Have you ever noticed how rarely you replay the parts that didn't feel right? This imbalance can create a distorted picture where what you remember feels more powerful than the full reality. To move forward, it helps to gently widen your perspective. Not to criticize the past, but to see it clearly. When you allow yourself to acknowledge the entire experience, not just the highlights, your thoughts begin to lose that strong emotional pull. The memory becomes more balanced, and with that balance comes a sense of clarity. When there's silence, the mind tries to fill it. Without clear communication or answers, your thoughts begin creating their own explanations. You start guessing what the other person might be thinking, why things happened the way they did, or what could have been done differently. This can feel convincing, even real, but it's still your mind trying to resolve uncertainty. Silence doesn't always mean something meaningful. It often just means there's no more information coming. Yet the absence of answers can make the mind work harder, not less. It begins to build stories to close the gap, and those stories can keep you mentally engaged longer than necessary. A more grounded way to respond is to recognize when you've moved from reality into assumption. You bring your attention back to what you actually know, instead of what you're imagining. That shift reduces the mental noise. The questions may still exist, but they stop controlling your focus. Over time, this creates a quieter internal space, where you're no longer pulled back by what isn't there. What makes this feel so personal is that it's not just about the other person. It's about what that connection came to represent in your life. You gave it meaning, time, attention, and emotional energy. Over time, it may have started to feel like part of who you are, not just something you experienced. That's why when it's no longer there, it can feel like something inside you is missing. It's not simply absence. It feels like a shift in your identity. Do you ever notice how certain places, routines, or even thoughts feel different now? That's because your mind linked them to that connection. When those links break, there's a temporary gap. The important part is realizing that what you built around that connection can be rebuilt within yourself. Instead of defining yourself by what's no longer there, you begin reconnecting with your own values, your own direction, and your own sense of stability. That process takes patience, but it gradually restores a sense of wholeness that doesn't depend on anything external. At the same time, part of what keeps your mind engaged is not just what happened, but what could have happened. There's often a quiet attachment to the idea that things might have turned out differently under other circumstances. You may find yourself revisiting alternate versions of the past, imagining better outcomes or different choices. This creates a sense of unfinished possibility, which can be harder to let go of than reality itself. The mind tends to hold on to potential because it feels open-ended, as if something is still there to be resolved. But holding on to what never fully existed can keep you from fully accepting what did. A more grounded step is to gently separate imagination from fact. You acknowledge the difference between what was real and what was hoped for. This doesn't erase the feeling, but it reduces its hold. As that separation becomes clearer, your focus begins to return to the present, where real movement and growth can happen. You may have noticed how your mind keeps circling the same thoughts, as if going over them again might finally give you control. It can feel like if you analyze everything carefully enough, you'll understand it, fix it, or somehow make peace with it. But overthinking often creates the opposite effect. Instead of resolving anything, it keeps you mentally tied to the situation. It gives a sense of involvement, as though you're doing something productive, but it quietly drains your energy. The mind stays active, but nothing actually moves forward. This can create a cycle where thinking becomes a habit, not a solution. The more you engage with those thoughts, the stronger they feel. A more helpful approach is to notice when the thinking shifts from useful to repetitive. You don't have to force the thoughts away, but you can choose not to follow them further. You let them pass without building on them. This reduces their intensity over time. As you step back from the need to control every thought, your mind begins to settle, not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer trying to control what can't be controlled. At the same time, letting go doesn't happen in a single moment. It often feels like something that should be quick and decisive, but in reality, it's gradual. There may be days when you feel completely fine, and then something small brings the thoughts back again. That doesn't mean you've gone backward. It simply means the process is still unfolding. Healing moves in layers, not in a straight line. Each time you choose not to go deeper into the same thought pattern, you're making progress, even if it doesn't feel dramatic. Patience becomes an important part of this process. Instead of expecting immediate change, you allow yourself to move through it step by step. Over time, the intensity of the thoughts decreases. They may still appear, but they don't carry the same weight. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel distant, and your attention gradually shifts back to your own life, where new meaning and direction can take shape. So if you've been asking yourself why you can't stop thinking about them, and how to finally let go, understand this. It's not because you're stuck. It's because your mind is still processing what mattered. But you don't have to stay there. You can move forward with patience, clarity, and strength. So ask yourself today, what am I still holding on to that I'm ready to release? Share your thoughts below. How are you healing today? And remember, peace begins the moment you stop going back.